Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. And the book that I'd like to talk about today is Roger Zelazny's short story collection, The Doors of His Face, The Lamps of His Mouth, and Other Stories, published in 1971. So this was another short story collection that I read for Short Sci-Fi September. And it was the winner of the poll that I put up on my channel to help me decide my TBR at the start of the month. Now, we're into October now, so this is a little bit late coming, but I've been pretty busy over the last week or so, so I finally got some time to talk about this book. So, this is the third book that I've read by Zelazny. The other two being his novels Lord of Light and This Immortal, both of which I loved. And one thing that's always impressed me with his writing is the quality of his writing and his exceptional ability to combine science fiction with things like fantastical elements and mythological influences. He was very talented at creating strange and evocative imagery that adds a certain richness to his prose. And I think the short stories in this collection are a good showcase for this. There are 15 stories in here, and they were all originally published in magazines throughout the 1960s. And it's a solid collection overall. I'm very pleased that this book was picked to round off Short Sci-Fi September. So let's discuss some of these stories. I'm going to focus on just a few of them, the ones which stood out for me and were my favourites. So perhaps the most famous story in here is called A Rose for Ecclesiastes, which was originally published in 1963, and it was Hugo nominated the following year. And this is a tale in which a linguist from Earth goes on a first contact mission to Mars to try and understand the culture and the language of the Martians who live there. So the Martians in this story are an intelligent and advanced race. They are extremely long-lived, but they're also a dying race, and they've gone sterile. All of their males have gone sterile following some kind of cataclysmic event in the distant past. So it's an interesting concept and backdrop to the story. This is a story that has got quite a lot of drama, so personal drama. We've got mystery, we've got romance, a cross-species romance even, of a sort. And the whole story is written in quite an intriguing way. So we've got this linguist who tells the story, and he's also a poet, and he's very gifted at what he does, which is why he gets picked for this mission. But he's also incredibly arrogant and quite an unreliable narrator as a result. So it adds quite an interesting dynamic to the story, I think. It's worth checking out. I think that this is quite a good story to sample Zelazny's writing if you've never read him before. But it's not actually my favourite from this book. My favourite short story in here is called Divine Madness. And it's not one I've ever heard anyone talking about, but I absolutely loved it. So this story is only 7 pages long, and it's quite a simple concept at its heart, but it's beautifully told, it's quite mind-bending, and it packs an extremely emotionally impactful punch. The protagonist in this story is suffering from these bizarre seizures in which he seems to go back in time. So during each seizure, he gets stuck in a temporal paradox where he relives events in his recent life in reverse. So it's a sort of backwards time travel in real time. And it's a concept that is pretty confusing and quite disturbing, actually. And during these episodes, he loses all of his free will, so he can't actually control his body or the events around him. He can only watch as events play out in reverse. And this could last for a few minutes or a few hours or whatever. These seizures last for a certain while. Before he's released from the seizure, time goes back to normal and he regains his free will. Okay, so we've got this situation, and the length of these seizures in this story seem to be getting more extended with each relapse. And ultimately, they are going back to some crucial traumatic event in his life, which is the point of origin of this bizarre mystery, so it seems. So, again, this is an example of Zelazny's remarkable lyrical prose with a fascinating concept to boot, and the ending is very moving and truly unforgettable. So I really liked it. It's a definite 5-star story. Another story whose concept I found interesting is called Devil Car. And this is a tale about sentient AI automobiles. And it reads a bit like a Western. In this world, AI cars are so advanced that they've basically developed minds of their own. So while they're supposed to be programmed to follow their owner's instructions, for some reason some of these cars have gone rogue and they've murdered their drivers, and they now roam in packs across the Great Western Road Plain. Okay, so you've got these wild packs of cars on the loose, and the protagonist in the story is a motorist who's got his own AI self-driving car, okay, a heavily armoured killing machine who is programmed to follow his every command and is fully attuned to its owner and able to talk to him, have intelligent conversations with him, and whom he personifies as a woman whom he calls Jenny. So basically Jenny is a character in her own right. And together, these two people, Jenny and her driver, are on a mission to hunt down the legendary leader of the rogue cars, who is an equally fearsome killing machine known as the Devil Car. So obviously this is going to lead to some kind of big dramatic showdown. So it's quite an interesting premise, which seems simple enough to start with, but it does have an intriguing twist later on. So those are a few of the stories that stood out for me. And there are plenty more in here that I liked, such as The Keys to December is one of the earlier stories, and this is about a race of cat form people who have been genetically engineered to live in a far-off planet to work for a mining corporation. And there's another story called This Mortal Mountain, which is again set on another planet, and this is about a climbing expedition up an epic 40-mile high mountain, and it's a kind of fantastical adventure story, but it's also a ghost story because this mountain is haunted. So there's quite a lot of variety of stories in here. But while I enjoyed most of the stories, they didn't all hit the mark. So the title story, for example, which is what it's called, "The Doors of His Face, the Lamps of His Mouth." That was the first story in this book, and to be honest, I found that one pretty boring. It's basically about a fishing expedition for the Leviathan under the ocean on Venus, which sounds like a cool idea. But I found the characters in this story very uninteresting and the plot kind of confusing to follow. So I may be in a minority here because this one did pretty well with the awards and it even picked up the Nebula Award. But as an opener to the collection, it fell a bit flat for me. And there were a few other stories in this volume, not that many, but a handful of the really short ones under the 10-page length that didn't really do that much for me either. But I'm not going to let that detract from my overall opinion of this book, because I think on the whole this is a really solid collection and there's enough quality content in here that I can definitely recommend it. And once again, I've not been let down by Zelazny as a whole, so I'm keen to check out more of his works. I don't have any more Zelazny books in my collection at the minute, but I am very keen to read his time travel novel Roadmarks, which I don't have a copy of yet, but I'm on the lookout for. So let me know if you've read that one and if it's worth picking up, or indeed if there are any other Zelazny books out there that you think I should read and you particularly recommend. In the meantime, I have started reading another book. The book I'm reading at the minute is Colin Wilson's Spider-World: The Tower, which is a very interesting book, and I can't wait to start talking about it. So I will post a review of this book once I'm done. That's all for now, though. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.